Well, good morning and welcome back. I'm joined by Dr. Casey Harbine for another edition of Morning Rounds. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, today we're talking about to eat or not eat red meat. So there's yo-yo information up and down of red meat consumption. What is the recent new hearing about eating red meat?
Right. So actually for a couple years now, we've been hearing about increased risk of consumption of red meat, processed meats, potentially leading to increased risks of colon cancer and heart disease. And there's been a real move towards a plant-based diet. Recently, the Annals of Internal Medicine, one of the leading internal medicine medical journals, published a series of articles that looked at a lot of these studies and determined that the evidence supporting complete elimination of red and processed meat from our diet is pretty weak to make those recommendations.
So how are these studies different and what accounts for the different recommendations?
Well, this is a key part of kind of understanding how we come to learn about things in medicine and make recommendations for things. So a lot of these studies that looked at consumption of red and processed meat, they're observational studies, which means they took a group of people, they said, hey, tell us about your dietary habits, let's follow you for a little bit, and let's see if you get cancer, or see if you have heart disease. And they made conclusions based on that. Typically, what we think of as really strong evidence are studies which are a little bit more controlled than that, are prospective, meaning we start at point A and we get out to point B at so many years down the road. We try and control for what we call confounding factors. Are both groups exercising the same? Do both groups have the same family history? That sort of thing. And so these observational studies sort of were lacking in that. And so what happened recently is when they reviewed it, they did something called a meta-analysis or review of these, and they sort of put them in statistical models and found that the reduction in risk was small and that the evidence to support it was really unable to account for other confounding factors.
Anything else that these new studies found?
So like I said, they found that probably your reduction in risk, if anything, was small, and that the all-cause mortality really wasn't as robust as were originally reported. And that can happen when you take a big group of studies, you look at larger numbers, and the statistical difference becomes not as impressive as it was.
So no real benefit that they've seen to reducing red meat in your diet.
So you can't really say that either. What these studies show is that there wasn't overwhelming evidence, that the evidence that we had to recommend complete elimination was weak. But keep in mind there's probably other arguments to be made for reducing red and processed meat in our diet.
Do plant-based diets help in any ways?
Well, so they probably do. For one, increasing the vegetables in our diet probably has some helpful things. But not all plant-based diets are equal. So for example, we've all been hearing about the vegan hamburger coming out at Burger King. Well, it still has 630 calories, and that's compared to 660 calories in a Whopper. Has the same amount of saturated fat, and in fact includes more sodium than the regular Whopper.
So what are your recommendations?
So I think it's important to listen to everything that we hear in the news and take it with a grain of salt. These new studies are calling into question the strong recommendation of adhering to a plant-based diet for reducing heart disease and cancer. But what they're not doing is saying that it's okay to eat meat every day, go away with wild abandon, no big deal. It's always good, take into account your own personal risks, your family risks, and maybe there are other things, lifestyle modifications, exercise, and things like that you can reduce your risk. Moderation, everything in moderation.
All right, well, thank you for answering some of those questions for us. If you have any questions you'd like answered here on Morning Rounds, email them right to us, morningrounds@kpax.com.